Hello everyone, this is Kenneth Brony from Tech. Today's tutorial, we are going to look at margins and paddings. At Tech, we say learn programming, you can do it. This is basically a tutorial I'm going to zoom on specifically on margins and paddings. So once you begin to work with HTML and CSS, you are definitely going to come across margins and paddings one way or the other. I have an HTML crash course as well as a CSS crash course that pretty much touches on everything I'm going to say now. However, I've taken time to zoom on to these specific areas so that people who probably need a quick fix or a second explanation to some of these things can have access to. So in order to understand margins and paddings very well, we need to conceptualize everything as it is presented in the box model. So any HTML element you have, being in an HTML tag or a div or a class or an ID, every element is represented in a box. So let's take this big blue box as an example. Now, one thing you're going to see is we have a border around this. So the border is what is surrounding the box. So this is the blue box and there's a border of color black. And a normal circumstance, HTML, CSS, there's a border there, but you have to tell or you need to apply it before it shows. So in this case, we can say we have a box of blue with a border of black. Now the same thing is appearing here. However, I also have this box inside this big box. So this is a small box and this is a big box. As far as this small box is concerned, this is the internal distance between the small box and the big box. So this is the top of it. And this has to do with the padding. So the internal distance is referred to as a padding. And the external distance between two elements is referred to as the margin. So as far as the padding and margins are concerned, we have the padding top, the padding right, padding bottom, and padding left. We also have margin top, margin right, margin bottom, and margin left. Now, it is important to also bear in mind that as far as the movement is concerned, it moves in the clockwise direction. And I'm going to emphasize why it moves in the clockwise direction. So at this point, we're going to see the practical illustrations of what I'm referring to. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a new folder I'll call MP, which is representing margins and paddings. I'll open it up. It's an empty folder, as we can see. Then I'll right click and say open with code. So if you have VS Code, you are definitely going to see this option. I have a video on how to download and install VS Code. So definitely I'll link it up in the description below so that you're going to have a look at it if you're not using VS Code. VS Code is very useful for this work. So you have it this way. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new file. So over here, I'm going to say index.html. Then after index.html, I'm going to create a new file. I'll say style.css. So I have index.html, style.css. And if you go back into our folder, we can actually double click on it and it opens up as we see over here. Now I'm going to put my VS Code side by side with the browser. All right, so here we are. So the first thing I'm going to do is to put out the HTML structure. And I'm going to say for the title, I'm going to say homepage. So when I save this and come and refresh, we are going to see this title change up over here. So we are seeing homepage over here. All right. Then I'm going to link this up with the CSS. So I'll say link, then I'll do // and I have style.css. All right. So what I normally do is first of all, I check. So I'll do a background color of, let's say, red. And once I do this, I know that yes, everything is working out very well. So I'll clear this and we'll continue with our work. Okay, so the first thing we are going to talk about, I made mention of the fact that every HTML element has some margins and paddings one way or the other. So for instance, this is the body. And we all know the body is the entire body of the website. So let's see if indeed the body has a margin or padding. But of course, like I said, we can specify that. So we can grab in the body, and as far as the body of the website is concerned, we can say border. And for the border property, we have to specify the width of the border, which is, we are specifying as 2 pixels. Then the type of border that we want a solid border. And this time around, we want a color of blue. So when we do this and come and refresh over here, you can see that there's a border blue around here. And that's exactly what we have. Now, what we can do in order to see things very well, and that's basically what we are going to delve more into, we can look at padding. And for instance, when we say a padding of 100 pixels and save this, we are going to see it stretch. So basically, this is the internal distance. Okay, remember I made mention of the fact that the padding is the internal distance. And when we say a margin of 30 pixels, the margin is the external distance. So you are going to see some distance over here, some distance in here, some distance over here, and here as well. So when I refresh, that's basically what we see. There's a distance here, there's a distance to our right, there's a distance to our bottom, but we are not seeing it for obvious reasons. And also there's a distance to our left. So that's just by way of information. Now, in order to properly appreciate this, I'm going to clear this off and rather start with the very fundamentals. So let's say we have an H1 tag. And inside H1, we have Cambridge. When I save this and come back to come and refresh, we have Cambridge over here. As usual, we can grab the H1 tag and apply a border around it. So you can have border 2 pixels. We can say solid. Let's do red. 2 pixels solid red. So you are going to see a border of 2 pixels solid red around Cambridge, and that's exactly what we have over here. Then, if you want an internal distance between the content, which is the text, and the border line, as we can see over here, then we can specify a padding. A padding is the internal distance. Now, in order to do so, we could have well done padding, and as you can see, you have padding left, top, bottom, and right, like I showed you in the diagram. But in order to also amplify some of the things I'm saying, and for a better illustration of it, let me strike this up, and we can do Ctrl+Shift+I to inspect our page. And this is basically what we have. So these are HTML elements, and as you can see, these are the codes that we have over here. So basically, we only have our body and our H1 tag, and that's what is being highlighted over here. So when we click on this, it gives us everything that we've written so far. So these are HTML styling, and it is actually linked to style.css, and that's what you see over here. And this is by default the H1 default property that comes with H1. You can change some of them over here. You can decide to move on with that. So for instance, there's a font size of 2em. We can change 2em to something, and when we change 2em, you will see that it is going to be cancelled, and the new styling is going to appear over here because this is inside our style.css. So basically, this is what I'm trying to imply. Inside H1, we can see font size. When we say a font size of, let's say, 4em, certainly the font size is going to change. So when we save this and come back into our browser and come and refresh, when we refresh, we can see that the font size has changed, and clearly the 2em has been cancelled, and now we have 4em over here. So this is basically the default styling that comes with an H1 tag. Okay, these are all the default styling, and this is what we are specifying based on the styling that we want. Now, if you should come down, you are going to see this box, and that's basically what I displayed with the box model. So when you hover around it, it's actually going to show you every aspect of where you are. So for instance, you can see that the area gets a little bit shaded color blue. Okay, and that's where we are. So this is the content, and you can see that the padding, now we don't have any padding around, so we are not seeing anything. But then if we should go back and specify, let's say, a padding of, let's say, 50 pixels. If we should do a padding of 50 pixels, come and refresh over here, we are seeing that there's an internal distance of 50 pixels all around it. Now, when we come here, you can see that the padding has also changed to 50. So clearly, it is very responsive as far as this whole thing is concerned. So this is the content, and when we come to the padding, it highlights it for us. And when we go outside, this is the border, and the border is 2 pixels, and that's what we see over here as the color red. And when we go outside it, it is a margin. When we go outside this, it is a margin. So basically, this is where the concept of the box model is derived from. So back to seeing things this way. Now, instead of saying padding 50 pixels, we could have said padding top and say 50 pixels. So obviously, when we say padding top 50 pixels, all that we are trying to say is we want to specify that it is only a padding at the top that we are looking for. So we're only going to see the distance over here and not the other places. So when you refresh, that's basically what we have. Now this is going to extend a blank page over here, because by default there's a block element. So that's why you have this being displayed this way. So this is what we have. So if we should go back and say padding 50, this is essentially what we have. Now remember, I made mention of the fact that we have a padding top, padding right, padding bottom, and padding left. Now if we say 50, 100 pixels and save this, all that we've done now is to say we need a padding top and down. So the first one, if we only specify 2 values, all that we are trying to say is that we need a padding top and down, top and bottom 50 pixels, and left and right 100 pixels. So when we refresh this and see, we can see that this has expanded, but then this has remained as it is. We can also say 100. So when we say 100 pixels, 500 pixels, and 700 pixels, and save this, all that we've done as far as this line of code is concerned is we want a padding top. So that's why I keep on emphasizing that it moves in the clockwise direction. So the first value is going to go to the top, the second value is going to go to the right, the third value is going to go to the bottom, and the last value is going to go to the left. So we have top, right, bottom, and left. So 50 for the top, 100 for the right, 500 for the bottom, and 700 for the left. So when we refresh this, that's essentially what we have. It's actually taking up a lot of space over here because this is 700 pixels. Okay, so in another set of example, we are going to look at a more practical approach of how these margins and paddings work out. So we are actually going to design a navigation area. So first of all, I'm going to use the semantic HTML tag header, and inside header I'm going to have a nav, and I'm going to have a URL element, and these are things you see with the designs of websites. So I'm going to have a link tag, and inside the li tag I'm going to have an anchor tag. So this is not going to lead anywhere. You are just looking at the markup of it. So we have home here. When I save and come and refresh over here, we see home over here. So what I would want to do is I would want to duplicate this a number of times. So I'll just click on anywhere on the line and do Shift Alt and the down arrow key. So for instance, we can have let's say about, I have contact, and let's say we have profile. So when we save this, these are going to be lined up this way. Good. We are going to look at how we can use margins and paddings in our design as we see over here. So the first thing we are going to do is we are going to grab the header, and there's a header you see over here. So we can grab the header tag and apply some styling to it. What I would want to do is I would want to see a padding of 50 pixels. But we are not going to see this very well, so let's give it a background color of, let's choose something a little bit blackish. So I'll save this, and when we refresh, that's basically what we see over here. So you have a padding of 50 pixels, and the padding, like we all know, specifies the internal distance. So everything you have over here is within this head, or is within this header tag, and we are specifying an internal distance of 50 pixels. So you see 50 pixels over here all around it. Now 50 may look too big, so let's say we choose 20. After choosing 20, when we refresh, that's essentially what we see over here. Now I'd want to change this color over here, so I'll just choose something which is a little bit grayish in color. So that's what we have. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go using the CSS selectors, some kind of a directory. So now you are the header. We are going to go into the nav, the UL, and the li elements. So this is what I mean. Right in the header, we can go inside the nav, then we can go into the UL elements, and we can grab the li element within the UL element. So this is the li element. So we have the header, the nav, the UL, and the li. I like to do this systematically so that I don't get confused along the line. So within this li, I can see that they are displayed in a block form, and I want them displayed inline. So what I can do is I can say display inline, and when I choose display inline and refresh, I have them inline over here on the same line, and that's basically what you see on a lot of websites. Now what I can also do is to also grab give out some margins and paddings around the li elements. Okay, so I can see they are so stacked to each other. So what I can do is I can say padding, and this is because I want an internal distance between the elements. So when I do a padding of 20 pixels and save and come and refresh, you can see that internally they are being separated. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the element and change the color, because the color blue may not be what we need. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the color. So once again, I'm going to go into my header, my nav, li, and my anchor elements, because these are where the texts are found. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say color, and for color I can choose white. So when I choose white, save and come and refresh, you see that the colors are white over here. I don't want to see the underlining thing over here. So what I can do is I can say text decoration, and I'll choose none. So when I save this and refresh, the underlining is out. What I can also do is to, let's say, change the font size, and for font size I'm going to say 25 pixels. So when I refresh, you can see that our header is taking shape. So when I open it up over here, you can see that things are looking pretty much okay over here. Now if you are very observant, you can see that there's some small gap, okay, outside here, and there's also one over here, and that's basically some margin. Now by default, there are some margins and paddings around the entire HTML body. So what we want to do is we can come up over here. It doesn't matter where you put it, but then it's good you put them in that order. So you can grab body, and that's what you normally see whilst designing websites. You can do a margin of 0, and we can also do a padding of 0. So all that you are trying to say is you want to grab this body tag and apply a margin of 0, padding of 0. That means you don't want to see these small white spaces around. So when you refresh, you can see that they are gone. And that's basically what we have over here. So this is stretching all across. And this is basically what we see in a number of websites as far as using margins and paddings in the design are concerned. Now I'm going to go further into seeing how we can do some of these things. So we can say a div, and for a div we are going to have a class of container. Let's say we call this container 1, and we are going to grab container 1 and apply some styling. So let's grab container 1 and let's do a border first. So we want a border, and this time around we are going to do 2 pixels solid red so that it pops up very well. We are going to do a padding of, let's say, 20 pixels, and that's essentially what we have over here. Now we can see that the header and the container, as we see. So let me put some text in here so that we can see. So let's say we have container. So you have container over here. When I refresh, that's what you see over here. So the distance between, there's no external distance between the header and the borders of the container. Okay, so clearly that's what we refer to as a margin. So what we can do over here, we can actually come and specify a margin at the header, or we can specify it over here. And this is what I mean. If we should come into the header, we can say margin bottom. Okay, so we can say margin bottom. And if you should say margin bottom 30 pixels and save, you are going to see an external distance between those two elements. And when we refresh, that's essentially what we see over here. Now, like I said, we can specify it over here. So when I clear this off, it's going to go back. Or we can bring it in here. So in doing it here, we can say margin top, because this is the margin to the top, the external distance to the top. And when we do 40 pixels here too, and come and refresh, we can see that we are getting the 40 pixels over here. So it doesn't really matter where you put it, but then you have to be conscious of whether it is at the bottom or at the top. Now I'm going to put in another container, and this time around I'm going to say div, and I'm going to give it a class of container 2. So for container 2, let's change the text over here to container 1, and let me copy this, Control C, Control V to container 2. So when I save this, I also need to apply some styling to it. So I'll do container 2. Let me change it to a small letter, container 2. And inside container 2, I am pretty much going to use all these styling. And I'll clear this because I don't want any margin on top. So when I refresh, we are seeing container 1 and container 2. But as you can see, there's no margin between the two, so they are stuck together. Okay. The margin over here in container 1 is only applying to the top, and that's what we see over here. Now, what I can do is we can keep on repeating the margins over here, but then if we should go here and come and say, now we need a margin at the bottom, and if we should save this and come and refresh, you see that the margin is now appearing here, and that's the external distance between the elements. So I'm going to have a div, and inside the div I'm going to have, let's call this container 3, and inside container 3 I have a paragraph. So for the paragraph, I'll have, let's say, a lorem ipsum, I think 100 words of dummy text. So when I refresh, we are seeing this over here. Now this is a paragraph, and if we should expand this, this is how we see it on the full screen. Now we can grab the container and apply some padding to our margin as we have. And we can apply some paddings and margins to our paragraph. So what we are going to do over here is we can say dot container 3, and we grab the paragraph in there. And what we can do is we want a margin of 20 pixels. So what this means is we are going to see some kind of external distance around this entire paragraph, which is going to be 20 pixels. So when I refresh, you are definitely going to see this. And when I expand this, it shows here as well. Let me as well do this so that the text becomes justified as far as the alignment is concerned. So I can do text align. I'm going to select justify. When I refresh this, we are seeing this so that you actually see the margins around it properly. So basically, this is what we have. Let me change this to about 50 pixels. When I save this and come here and come and refresh, we are seeing this margin. So basically, this is the margin. Okay, and these are some of the things we see, because in some websites you can see that there's some kind of external gap over here. I would also want to do this. So I'm gonna have a div, and inside the div I'm gonna have a class of, and this time around I'm going to call this big container, another container. But this time around, let me use a span, and I'm going to say class small container. So I'm going to have a paragraph in here, some lorem dummy text, 100 of them, like I always do. And when I refresh, this is basically what we have over here. Now we're going to apply some styling, specifically as far as the margins and paddings are concerned, with regards to the big container and the small container. So what I can do over here is I can grab the big container, and for big container I'll do a border of 5 pixels solid red. When I do this and save, you're going to see that for our big container we have 5 pixels solid red. Okay, so far we are not seeing small container yet, so let's do something for small container. So I'll do a small container, and I'm also going to specify a border of 2 pixels solid blue. And when I save and come and refresh, we are seeing this over here. It is not showing properly as we would expect, but then you can see that there's some small element in here, and I think it's because we are using a span tag, and for the span tag, the span is actually an inline element and the div is a block element. So let's use div for all of them. So I'll change this to div, and when I save, you can see that we have our blue in there as well. So what we can do actually is to give out some margin. Okay, we can come into the blue or the small container as we have it over here and give a margin, an external distance, so that it separates it from the red container or the big container. So we can do a margin of, and if we say 40 pixels, so when we just specify margin, remember it's going to apply a margin of 40 pixels to the top, right, bottom, and left. So when we refresh, this is essentially what we have as far as the margin is concerned. So this is the margin. That's essentially what I showed in the presentation. Now, if we want a padding over here is going to be from this internal borderline to the actual element, which is the text. So that has to do with the internal element. So if I should say a padding of 20 pixels and save, let me choose 50 pixels as well and save. When we come here and come and refresh, we are going to see that the internal distance has also been expanded or widened up, and that's basically what we sought to achieve. So primarily, this is the fundamentals of margins and paddings. Now, if you find this tutorial very interesting and very helpful, there are a couple of ways you can help me grow my channel. Kindly subscribe to Tech by clicking on the subscription button, and as well clicking on the notification button so that anytime I release a video, you are going to be notified. Also, please share this video with anyone who will find this content very useful. At Tech, we say learn programming. You can do it. Thank you very much. Bye bye.